Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to 5G and LTE Latin America's pre-event webinar. We're pleased to announce that Alberto Boaventura, who is the Network Strategy and Architecture Manager at Oi Brazil, and one of our keynote speakers at our event in Rio de Janeiro in April, will be joining us to deliver a presentation on 5G spectrum alternatives in Brazil. After the presentation has ended, please feel free to go onto the 5G and LTE Latin America website, and if you are an operator, please book a free operator pass, and if you are from a vendor company, please book your delegate pass to attend this conference, which will take place between the 24th and the 25th of April 2019 at the Windsor Borough Hotel in Rio de Janeiro. This conference will constitute our 10th annual show in Rio de Janeiro and will welcome the entire telecommunications industry to the conference, where they'll be talking about next generation technology deployments and services in Latin America. So, Alberto, over to you and your presentation. Take it away.
Hello, hi everyone. My name is Alberto Ventura. I'm Network Strategy and Architecture Manager at Oi. The reason that we are here is to bring some point of views of spectrum alternatives of 5G. So our presentation is structured by the following. And the first part, we are talking about some motivations of 5G, the challenge of 5G, and as one challenge is spectrum management, and that's what we needed to deal with. And the second part, we are going to in deep analysis of each kind of portion of spectrum for 5G, below 1 gigahertz, and between 1 gigahertz and 3 gigahertz, 3 gigahertz and 6 gigahertz, and also above 24 gigahertz. Our industry recent history is based on the evolution waves since the 90s with internet introduction, commercial one, and followed by mobile internet, and current days we are facing with Internet of Things. In the upcoming years, in the next decade, we are going to talk about tactile internet. Each kind of stage, we verified a set of technology that allow us to have new services, and we can emphasize the smartphone and the mobile internet that begin of digital transformation, and Internet of Things with capacity of network to work with a lot of connected things and objects and devices, and the last one with tactile internet, more and more services based on the low latency. So the tactile internet will have a new environment where the latency is important as throughput. So we are facing with services that will require to have more interactive with internet in general, where audiovisual experience will be not anymore a limit of to access the service of internet, where we are faced with total immersion of internet, so that we are going to touch internet. Some technologies will allow us to have this. One of technology will be even the 5G, bringing with us, SDN and FV concept and the fog computing and so on. So, but why we needed to create a new network? Just because part of service that is planning to have in next decade will not be allowed with an existing network. So all of those services based on the low latency needs to have some modification in our network. So this reason that the industry in general created this new program. This new program is 5G, where it's based on three main pillars. One pillar is a lot of things, connected things, that we call massive machine type communication. Another thing is we needed to have more and more throughput, eventually 100 hires that we have today, that we call enhanced mobile broadband, and the application, specific application where we have very low latency, like and high reliability, that we call ultra reliable and low latency case or communications. So the best vision of 5G is what next generation mobile network brought. Is 5G is an end-to-end ecosystem to enable a fully mobile and connected society. It empowers the value of creation towards customers and partners through existing and emerging use cases, delivering with a consistent experience enabled by sustainable business models. So, but in general, what we talk about 5G, we talk about the use case. But 5G is not only the use case with a higher throughput and a low latency and something like that, where we are comparing with the existing 4G, but we'll bring new models where we are going to explore our network, but not a network anymore, but a part of virtualized network, and we are exploring as infrastructure, as a service network, as a service platform, as a services, and more and more situation where we have network sharing. This is something like quite new for operators around the world. And for sure, the 5G will bring a new value creation, where we have more security connections and identity and experience and services. So, but 5G is not represent only an opportunity to operators, but a very tough challenges that we needed to focus, and we needed to plan, and we needed to understand. So if you compare what happened with the beginning of mobile internet at around 20 years ago, we are facing with 2 megabits per second per user. This is IM 2000, and just a few sites per square kilometers, one site per square kilometers, and the requirement in terms of backhaul capabilities is very low backhaul, and even the spectrum needed, and we are talking about 5 megahertz per carrier. So the second stage with HSPA, the situation has modified, and for 4G is the same situation, where we are talking about more and more sites per square kilometers and more spectrum per operators. So it represents a very high cost, and where we needed to work with the costs associated with spectrum, costs associated with network, and how to manage all of those costs in order to provide the service with quality and affordable services to our end users. So the resource management is we have 3 possibilities, 3 alternatives. When we are talking about, if you saw this dotted line here, and where we have only the coverage, when we are talking about to increase the demands, we have 3 alternatives: or create a new sites, or eventually to include a new feature in our network, or adding more spectrum to our network. So this is basically the strategy what network planning needs to do. So in order to understand this, we need for sure to understand the cost of this, and the cost of this is based on our suppliers for sure, and analyze the scenarios. If you are going to see here this graph here, for instance, here we have this curve here is what we have with existing infrastructure only to add a new site with this scenario here, 2600 megahertz with a 10 plus 10 megahertz. If you are going to do this curve here, if you need to increase the capacity, we need to put more sites here, densifying these sites. If you are going to do a refarming of 800, including more than 5 gigahertz, we are going to have this new curve here, where we are faced, cheapest scenario if you compare with the previous one. And the third curve is related to when we have 10 plus 10 refarming of 1800, and we have a more affordable scenario if compared to the previous one. But if you're looking for the small cells is not good for coverage. It's more expensive if you compare, but in some stage, a small cell is beginning to be more and more affordable solution comparing to another one. This is something like that we needed to deal with. Depends on the how density is our traffic for a specific region. For another side, we needed to talk about the coverage, where the spectrum is important in terms of the propagation behavior of each kind of spectrum. If you are talking about spectrum below 1 gigahertz, we have best propagation, and when we are talking about millimetric wave, we have a worst propagation here. So this is something like that we need to deal with. So bands and requirements is 5G is not different for previous generations, and we'll need more spectrum. And I2R has foreseen additional at minimum at least 1 gigahertz and 1.3 gigahertz per country to 20 gigahertz per country. In Brazil is something like that we needed to identify and we need to provide in order to have all of benefits that 5G will bring. So the spectrum, based on the previous slide, depends on what we are talking about. Spectrum is good for coverage vis-a-vis capacity. Spectrum is good for when we have high connective reliability. 1 gigahertz is due to the propagation behavior is better than higher spectrum, just because it has a good propagation. And for another side, we have a lower connective latency, where a spectrum above 24 gigahertz, just because we have a very high bandwidth, is good for to carry or to attend or to comply with this requirement in terms of low latency. Massive type communication, for sure, is when we are talking about communications with things where need a very low throughput, such as meterings, such as some very few data that need to communicate. For sure, that spectrum below 1 gigahertz, where the bandwidth is not important, is good. It will be good for machine type communication and not only for the low throughput as this communication can do, but that's a good propagation and good connection as well. For another side, above 24 gigahertz, we need very high spectrum for applications such as where throughput is the best attribute. So this is some picture that support the previous discussion. Is here we have a millimetric wave in total 30 gigahertz in terms of available spectrum, and we're talking about below 1 gigahertz with a 7 megahertz with only 90 megahertz of total spectrum. This is just a comparison with spectrum. Another thing it's very important is this in Brazil is the case is the number of cell sites. If you have a higher number of cell sites, for sure the spectrum is something like that is important for sure, but it's not too important. But we have less cell sites, for sure the spectrum, we need to have more spectrum to compensate this lack number of cell sites. In Brazil, number of cell sites is based on some barriers, some legal barriers, and fortunately there are some initiatives like antennas law that solve some things, but we are still facing with a lot of legal barriers to create a new cell site in our existing grid. And the third here is based on the specific place that millimetric wave is preferable against midbands. And for each kind of portion of spectrum, we need for full 5G operation and to have full benefits, we have some portion of spectrum. Below 1 gigahertz, we need eventually any 20 megahertz carriers of below 1 gigahertz should be enough for some application like machine type communication, another application that needs to have like rural areas or so to provide for connectivity to rural areas. When we are talking in urban areas where we have services such as enhanced mobile broadband, FWA, fixed and wireless access. And for sure that we need midbands will be very important player. And as soon as this service will increase, eventually to complement the portfolio for fiber, the millimetric wave will be very important resource to complement this. And we are talking about 1 to 2 gigahertz per operators. So below 1 gigahertz here in Brazil, we don't have yet a lot of opportunity. Part of spectrum has been sale, has already designated by our agents here. And what we are facing in the upcoming years may be the discussion about 600 megahertz for digital dividend 2. And so we are waiting for this discussion. It should be an alternative as happening with US. And eventually, if you compare with 700 in the Europe. And this is something like that we are expecting to have a good discussion in the upcoming years. Midbands between 1 and 3 gigahertz is what we have our existing, previous technologies or previous wireless generation, and we have 2G in 1800, 3G in 2100, and we have 4G in 2600. Eventually, we are doing refarming in 1800 for 4G. But in Brazil, we are some available spectrum. One spectrum that is available is L-band. That will be a new auction. S-band is something like that in the discussion here. Is maybe it should be an opportunity to have a service with some satellite operators, as a partner. 2300, we are expecting to have in this year or next year a new auction for this. And 2800 is something like that is not discussed yet. This is overall opportunity that we have here for midbands between 1 and 3 gigahertz. For 3 and 6 gigahertz, for sure this is something like a good opportunity. It's different from the previous one, with where we have the previous technologies. Here we have a C-band. C-band in Brazil, our agents has designated 20 gigahertz, sorry, 200 megahertz, sorry, and therefore as a total spectrum for operating the C-band. So eventually we could use 100 megahertz, between 3.3 and 3.4 gigahertz, and currently it's used for broadcasting and for amateur radio. But eventually you could do a cleanup, and we could use a part of this spectrum as well. But currently we are discussing with some satellite operators doing some tests here in order to check about the interference, about the coexistence of two systems. And we are talking about in our operation, satellite operation. We have 3.6 gigahertz and 4.2 gigahertz in terms of spectrum for downlink in the satellite operations. And another discussion should be for sure the unlicensed spectrum. We are talking about 5 gigahertz should be a good opportunity to be explored as a complement for mid-bands for this kind of range here, 3 and 6 gigahertz. And also maybe a good discussion here, as happened with China, maybe the 4.4 and the 4.9 gigahertz spectrum should be checked here if we have a chance to use as well. Above 24 gigahertz is what we are doing is not different. What several countries in around the world, we are expecting to close the WRC 90 this year, where the ITU will identify the spectrum for 4 millimeter wave, and so we are expecting to use 26 gigahertz. And with complement with 40 gigahertz. Another spectrum that will be very important here for backhaul, where we are expecting to use eventually the E-bands as 70 gigahertz as well. So this is our complete overview. We do expect it to help you anyway in some information about what happened here. I believe that it's not different with another country in our region here. And I'd like to thank very much your attention, and I'm here to eventually my email is this slide. If you need any kind of additional information, please feel free to contact me, and I will be very, very important to us to this discussion. Thank you very much.
Obrigado, Alberto. If you wish to join us at 5G and LTE Latin America to hear from Alberto and to see him personally and to network with him, please do not forget to book your pass to attend 5G and LTE Latin America, which will take place on the 24th to the 25th of April in Rio de Janeiro. Thank you everybody for listening, and hopefully we'll see you very, very soon. Bye-bye.